Item C, conference with SMEA, information was shared. Can we please all stand out? Ontiveros girls here for our recognition here. Could you please join us?
All right. Hello, board members, Dr. McDuffie, and the whole Santa Maria Bonita School District family. Happy holidays. My name is Gail Vianello, and I'm the proud principal of Ontiveros Elementary School. Next to me is my fantastic assistant principal, Steve Palin. Today, I present to you two of our dynamic second grade teachers, Miss Lipson and Miss Malin, and they're here with some of our unbelievably fantastic and super adorable second grade students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So go ahead and go out there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're not done.
Right. Aha! High five to everybody. That's awesome. Great job.
So good.
Take all next week off.
As we were discussing what we wanted to highlight for you this evening, we realized that every day condors are working hard. I had one teacher said, why don't we do a day in the life? And I thought that was a great idea. At JPO, we work hard, we play hard, and we innovate. You probably noticed that the Pledge of Allegiance was not just the historical pledge to our flag. It included our school motto and a pledge to ourselves, learning as we soar towards a future, whatever it takes, no excuses. Staff and students make this pledge to themselves. Our students take ownership of their learning. Our teachers take pride and work hard to facilitate the learning. We work until we learn. Nothing can stop us. Our school song.
School, you're a wonderful school, as distinguished as one school can be. You're the school I love, the birthplace of the lifetime of learning for me. Every condor knows if the students can show JPO is a real tool. You're proud to say we are the best. Ontiveros distinguished school. Ontiveros school of the learning to move all the parents and pupils agree. With the teachers stand, the friends all share, the math are the zeniths you'll see. Every condor knows that the students is sure JPO is a real tool. We're proud to say we are the best. Ontiveros distinguished school.
Great singing, fourth grade scholars. Good job. Give yourself a condor clap.
Our school song reflects the pride our students and staff feel about JPO. It was written many years ago by a former classroom teacher and our choir director, Diane Borad-Merkin. The video shows Miss Muccio's fourth grade class singing our school song. And I know they ended in our school motto also. Every day, our students have fun and work hard to learn. Here are some pictures of our students learning throughout the day And at an evening event like our family math night presented by our first grade team, hosted to show families how students can be taught at home in a fun and engaging manner.
Students also have the opportunity to learn every day through interactions with their teachers and their peers. Our teachers facilitate conversations so that the students have the tools to persevere even with the most difficult concepts. Our students also pledge and work hard to live healthy lives. These are some of the pictures from this year's Red Ribbon Week. Events like Red Ribbon Week allow for our students to pledge to live healthy and drug-free. Of course, with work comes play. Every moment at JPO is an opportunity to learn. Learning should be fun. Our staff gives our students opportunities to learn in fun ways. They also love playing at recess. We're so excited to give our students opportunities to learn through college and career readiness field trips. Innovation is encouraged as we know it brings us the best ideas. We also look for ways to help students learn outside the box. We set up a lab where teachers can bring their students to learn in a lab atmosphere. This makes learning especially fun.
Every day, every person at our site works to make the future dreams of our students come true. We are all, students, teachers, and staff, dedicated to this purpose. If you look at our bulletin board, there are more examples of condors working hard and soaring towards their dreams. And when we think of condor soaring, we love to think about the condors that have left our building to go on and do great things in their next schools and in our community. Many are serving on our own Santa Maria Bonita School District staff. You can see we have Miss Ramos up there. She's in the top. She's a first grade teacher and she was also a condor. We love all of our condors, past, present, and future. And we're proud to say, once a condor, always a condor. Thank you, Linda. I was hoping you would do that. Thank you, school board members, Dr. McDuffie. And I wish all you and all of our Santa Maria Bonita School District family an extra special holiday. Thank you.
Ms. Danielle, thank you. That was a great inspiration. Kids, that was a great job. That's a great way to start our meeting with all your spirit and pride and being true to your friends and respectful that you hit every note. So thank you guys. Great inspiration.
I do hope your teachers told you, second graders, that one person up here was once a condor. So what does that mean? If somebody was once a condor? Yes, always a
There's a
condor.
condor.
We'd all be saying that.
Yeah. Well,
To the principal.
I was not only a principal there, but I was a teacher too in second grade. And I'm wondering which one of you is in the room I used to be in.
Well, that was year-round, so you probably.
Yes, it was all of them, but I think I ended up in B8.
but thank you. We'll give a
Yay. Thank you for your hard work, and you all look spectacular in your school shirts. Very nice. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We'll take a quick break so they can go ahead and leave before we return.
Thank you, parents. We'll reconvene to the meeting. Item 4, election of officers. Dr. McDuffie? Yes, at this time. We will do an election of officers. Are there nominations for the office of President of the Board of Trustees?
I nominate Mr. John Hollingshead for presidency.
Good. Who, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
We're supposed to do the oaths of office.
Going along, going.
We'll hold.
Yeah.
We'll hold. So first we have the oath of office for newly elected and returning board members. So Miss Luz Maria Cabral, could you step down with me, please?
She doing me afterwards.
I could, yeah. I want you come standing line. I'd like for them to, we do it separately, but they can be here. We can go right here. Yes.
Can I stand over there?
Yes. Yes, you may.
Okay.
Go ahead. All right, let's go ahead and do it at the same time. Please raise your right hand. I state your name,
Ricky Lara,
I, Luz Maria.
do solemnly swear
do solemnly
Do
swear
solemnly swear.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
that I take
this obligation freely without
without
any mental
mental
obligation.
obligation
yes, or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
I will well and faithfully
I will and will faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties I'm
upon-
about to enter.
About to enter.
Yes, very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, well, I don't know if I need a mic, but I want to thank everybody for supporting me. I look forward to representing Santa Maria Bonita School District for another 4 years. Representing our kids, our classified, our certificated, and being as one. I know I'm one, but we're here as 5. But there's some people I'd like to really thank that stuck with me and were with me for what I want to do in my passion. And that is my wife, Carrie. Thank you. I love you. My son, Greg, and my daughter-in-law, Carla. My 2 grandsons, which are my life, Oliver and Miles. My other son, Roy and Nina, which are down in Long Beach. And I'd also like to thank the CSEA Chapter 129 for believing in me and giving me the opportunity to interview and representing them as well as the district as a whole. And I'd also like to thank my family. They have been great, big supporters of mine from the time when I started wanting to run for the school board. All my brothers and sisters, especially my brother-in-law Steve and my sister Marion, they've always stuck by us. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. I look forward to representing Santa Maria Bonita School District for another 4 years. Thank you.
Congratulations, and I will call you this for the last time tonight, President Lara. Okay, I think we had a motion to have John Hollishead be president by board member Lara and seconded by board member Valencia. Can I get a vote or roll call?
Mrs. Cordero,
I,
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia, Mr. Hollinshead,
I abstain.
Ms. Cabral.
Okay, the ayes have it. Congratulations, President Hollinshead. And I will gladly hand over the meeting to you at this point.
All right, so we'll move forward now. At this time, are there nominations for the office of Vice President of the Board of Trustees?
I'll make the recommendation that Mr. Ricardo Valencia for vice president.
Do you accept Mr. Valencia?
Well, you gotta get us-
Yes. Okay, do I have, we have to have he has to accept, then we have a motion, then we vote. So I'll move that Mr. Valencia will be the vice president. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Vice President.
Awesome. And so now can we have the roll call?
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia? Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
I'm lucky I have a script. So at this time, by the way, congratulations, Mr. Valencia, Vice President. Thank you. At this time, are there nominations for the office of Clerk of the Board of Trustees?
I will nominate Ms. Cordero as clerk.
Awesome. Do you accept that nomination?
I do.
All right. And I'll move that Ms. Cordero be the clerk. And then do I have a second? I second. Awesome. Roll call.
Mrs. Cordero? Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia? Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
So now,
Moving on, we have nomination for the County Committee on School District Organization.
no.
That's a really fun job.
Secretary.
Oh, do we go?
Secretary.
Do we?
Secretary.
Sorry.
I don't have this. I don't have Dr. McDuffie on.
Bottom, not on the bottom.
I know, but oh, okay. I'm going through my crib notes here. We get to do the musical chairs. All right. And so then I'll ask for a motion to designate the secretary to the board, please. It's currently Dr. McDuffie.
I will move to designate our superintendent, Dr. McDuffie, as secretary to the Board of Education.
I second.
Let's have a roll call on that one.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Musical chairs? Sure, why not? Ooh, wasn't really throwing that. I'm still waiting for all this. Kind of big. There we go. I apologize for getting out of order slightly. So we'll move on to item 7, motion to set time and date of the regular meetings. Currently, we're on the second Wednesday of the month with closed session beginning at 5:15, open session at 6 p.m. And we'll move forward with that part of the organization. Anything different? Is that a rule? We don't,
Do we gotta make a motion?
yeah,
I'll make a motion.
yeah.
To set the time and date of the regular meetings currently, the second Wednesday of the month with closed beginning at 5:15 and opening at 6.
I'll second.
I would just like to point out that the attached date, list of dates is more than the second Wednesday of the month, that we need to review those.
The special meetings?
To our special meetings.
Well, they
there's-
would not be special if they are already on the calendar.
Well, there's more than one in some months, and then there are also,
There's 2 in February, 2 in March, 2 in June, 2 in
and then the
September.
May meeting is on a different date, and the April meeting is on a different date than those.
So it's more than just the second Wednesday.
Say that again?
So you just wanted to point that out in regards to the motion?
Correct.
For a point of clarification. So do you want me to call those out, Mrs. Cordero, for clarification? Would that be helpful?
I think that would be good for those watching and listening. I mean, they will be published, but
Right. Do you have those, Kristen? Are they
they're
deep in here?
page 22.
22? Okay, thanks. Maybe that's, let's say, okay. So the exceptions would be January 18th, as we're coming back from the winter break. There'll be a second meeting in February on the 22nd, a second meeting in March on March 22nd. The April meeting, because of spring break, will be on the 19th. Is the 24th, is that because of the budget release? Is that why that's been moved to the 24th rather than the?
There's just one regular board meeting during that May meeting as well.
But that's
This is
also
the schedule.
that's well past the second Wednesday. So I was just curious why it was the 24th rather than the second Wednesday.
I think that's during that spring break time period as well, right?
And spring break precedes
in
April 19th.
Precedes it.
Matt, is that something that we coordinate with the?
I don't believe it has to do with the May revision.
Okay,
I know from time to time, we've had a board study session in May. But recently we've done some LCAP activity, I think in that second board meeting in May, but I don't know an answer to the question why whatever that
Okay.
is.
An exception.
Board
Yeah, sorry, an exception to the 2 meetings per month.
okay. So that's the only May meeting. There'll be a second meeting in June 21st. And then there are second meetings in September on September 22nd, in October on October 25th. So thank you, Ms. Cordero, for asking for the clarification. Because there's also conversation around that. We can move forward with the vote then. Do we need to do a roll call, Kristen, on that?
I can do that. Do you have a motion?
We did,
We already did that.
I believe. Yeah,
Sorry.
I believe it was Mr. Lara.
That's right. And Mr. Valencia, sorry.
No,
Mrs.
That's a
Cordero,
long time ago.
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia.
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Now for the really fun one, item 8, County Committee on School District Organization. At this time, are there any nominations for a representative to the County Committee on School District Organization? I currently hold that position.
I'll volunteer.
I'll make the recommendation. Yeah, I was gonna see Ms. Cordero would.
Sure. Good.
I'll
Can
make
you
the-
accept that? I take it since you volunteered?
Yeah.
I'll move that be the case, and can I get a second?
I second.
All right, and roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
I won't say that, it's taken 10 years for me to really figure out what the person who does this is responsible for. Because up until this year, I served on that committee, and people that serve on that county committee on school district organization are approached by the county superintendent. But the vote has to be taken across all 20 of the districts to elect that person. And there's 2 from each of the districts within, or the supervisorial districts, I should say, within the district. So it was always very confusing to me what this person does. And that person, if there is somebody new who is going to go on to that committee, they're sent a ballot to vote yes or no on that new person. And probably the only reason I know that is because I had to tell everybody when it was, because they asked, will you continue to serve? And I looked and I was in supervisorial district 5 and I said, oops, they changed the boundaries and I am no longer living in district 5. I am in district 4. So I can't do that. So we had to elect somebody new. So I am no longer on that committee. Wow. In case you all out there wanted to know that.
Thank you for the clarification. That's great to know.
More information than you really wanted.
All right, so then we'll move on to appears to item 9, resolution 2203. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Santa Maria Bonita School District, delegation of governing board powers and duties. So is that for the signatures and whatnot? Okay, do we need to move? Okay, so do I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 22-03 as presented.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Item 10 is adjourned to regular board meeting, open session. Do we need to do roll call again?
We can. You know,
I want to hear Miss Cabral.
Ms. Cabral.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. We're doing
We're doing roll call again.
roll call for open session. I want your first open session here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Here.
perfect.
Mrs. Cordero,
Present.
Mr. Lara,
Present.
Mr. Valencia,
Present.
Mr. Hollinshead.
Here. Thank you. And now on item 11, approval of the agenda as presented. Have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Mrs. Cordero has moved and Mr. Valencia has seconded on approving the agenda as presented. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Moving on to item 12, public comment, open session. Do we have any public comments, Dr. McDuffie?
Yeah, we have 2 public comments on non-agenda items.
Okay.
The first one is a phone recording. Ms. Kayla Ailman, teacher.
Board members and Dr. McDuffie, it's Kayla Ailman, the PE teacher at Battles again. Thank you for continuing to collaborate with maintenance and operations to help brainstorm ways to bring filtered water and refillable water stations to Battles. I'm really excited for that process. And this letter is to highlight the need to support teachers in Tier 1 and best teaching practices. That has recently received a proactive and reactive behavioral training, which aided in short-term solutions for student behavior. However, upon reflection, I realized teachers rarely receive opportunities to see colleagues in practice, particularly teaching behavioral management and de-escalation strategies. Teaching is a practice. Our world and teaching environment is changing rapidly. Thus, our teaching practice of establishing and maintaining high expectations and application of methods to address student behavior has evolved. Teachers need time and support to highlight what's working in current classes. Teachers need learning opportunities and training to practice effective methods of behavioral management. I recommend 1, time for peer-to-peer observations of current behavioral and academic best practices. 2, I recommend additional training of Tier 1 practices, which help teachers maximize behavioral and academic instruction. Thank you for your time. I look forward to collaborating with you all.
Thank you, Kayla.
Okay, our next public comment is from Steve Lavanino. And it is a live call, Zoom.
Thank you, Dr. McDuffie. Chairman Hollingshead, congratulations, and members of the board. Luce, congratulations on your election. But we're calling in tonight because we're just so proud of Ricky Lara, and I'm here with 2 of his sisters.
And I just want to say how proud I am of you, brother, and you're genuinely a caring person for those children. And I'm so proud of you for that. And Lydia?
Lydia.
Hi, brother. So good to see you. I'm so very proud of you. Keep up the good work and keep helping those children. They need the help, the guidance. And I know you're the man for the job.
Thank you. Love you guys. Thank you.
All right, we love you too. Thank you, Dr. McDuffie.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all we have.
All right. Thank you very much. Consent items, actions proposed for the consent agenda are consistent with adopted policies and approved practices of the district and are deemed routine in nature. They will be acted upon by roll call vote in one motion without discussion unless members of the board request an item's removal from the consent agenda, in which event it will be taken up in the order indicated on the main agenda. I have one clarification or request so that perhaps on this and regarding the consent agenda, not to pull, but it's very extensive, the list of items that are being disposed of. And I know that in the past, we've had concerns about us disposing of books and how that disposal occurs or how that distribution occurs. I know there's an explanation as to monetary amounts for anything. But in being on campuses today, I saw several of the books that are listed in here as kids reading, actually reading. So maybe I was going to ask for just clarification on that process about what is done with books that maybe are or are not part of curriculum.
And what we can do is we can put something in the board update for clarification on that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just, I know that because that happens every year.
Yeah, and because something
clear.
is on the list doesn't mean that it's obsolete necessarily in it
may be
title, but it may be that
it's not in condition to be.
It's not in condition to be.
Correct. Yeah. So just for a point of clarification, because I know people have raised that concern in the past.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the clarification, Dr. McDuffie, and the follow-up. So we'll proceed then with the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Lara that the consent agenda be accepted. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Very good. We'll move on to item 14A, the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant.
Board member.
Turning on my mic now. I'm the Director of Plan Alignment, and I'm here this evening to propose our plan for the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant. This is the most recent of the relief funds. Also reflected in your board packet is the 5 allowable purposes for this most recent one-time relief fund money. Those 5 purposes range from professional development of core academic areas, school climate, developing diverse book collections, operational expenses, and then COVID-19 health and safety responses as well. These funds in total for our district is $9.9 million, and they're available for encumbrance through the 2025-26 fiscal year. As you're aware, in our previous relief funds and board approved allocations, there's similar language in this most recent relief fund effort. What you're looking at in front of you is the allowable expenses for the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant and the already allocated funding for a number of those allowable expenses. So those are purposes that already have money tied to them in previous board approved plans. In an effort to be as strategic as possible, I'd like to call your attention to number 4. It's the one unique component of this block grant, and that's operational expenses. Our proposal today is to be able to allocate those funding. It's uniquely to this block grant that would be able to provide much needed critical playground updates for our students. If approved, we have 11 sites identified. We have a number of challenges in these sites, from rust, just general structure, fatigue, accessibility. The importance of allocating this funds not only aligns with our mission towards student equity, but also the clear priority from our superintendent, Dr. McDuffie, on student safety. If approved, these updates will ensure access for all of our Santa Maria United School District students. It will allow for a fall surface with rubber tile that has an ease of mobility around and onto the play equipment. It will incorporate wheelchair ramps onto the play structure and also provide shade canopies, part of the play structure, as evidenced earlier in the higher temperatures that every season seems to bring. It's much needed for us as well. If approved, you see potential design concepts that meet both that area of student equity as well as student safety, and overall just be able to provide a safe, accessible play structure, much more deserving of our Santa Maria Bonita School District students. Our timeline, if approved, will allow for construction as early as this upcoming summer for 6 of those sites, followed by the 5 other identified sites in 2024. And with that, this is our plan for the Arts, Music, Instructional Block Grant to ensure student safety and equity and access for our kids. Thank you for your consideration.
Boy, those are some nice structures.
I appreciate the depictions. That's, you know, this is something that we have talked about, inclusiveness for handicap access for many years. And it's nice to see it coming to fruition. And I especially appreciate the considerations given to the sites that have requested shade and structures to provide relief. So it's really good stuff.
Yeah, when I went to Oakley, we had the metal slide. Boy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was tall.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
Yeah. You didn't want to stick to it.
No. Yeah, great presentation. Nice. So all these funds will cover 1 through 4 then.
The funds are going to be, the total fund for the project is $15 million. It says 9.9 is critical towards trying to meet that 15 paired with some other funding sources.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
And just for clarifications for the public to know, how do you all prioritize these school sites that begin first, right? Because I'm sure there's different sites that have, many needs are already, right? I know you identified a list of those. So how do you all go about prioritizing? Is it based on which one is the most dilapidated first? Is it based on, oh, this one was renovated 5 years ago and now it's due? How do you all, do that?
I'm gonna have our director of facilities speak to that point.
Good evening, board members. So what we had done was we had two independent auditors come in and assess all our playgrounds. And they arrived at identifying these sites as the ones that were most in need of improvement. We also had our district safety inspector go through those 10 sites and identify the 6 that would start construction in the summer of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Colasus. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion that the board approve the arts, music, and instructional materials AMIM discretionary block grant plan as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Mrs. Cordero, that the board approve the arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant plan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to item 14B, Resolution 2204, Annual and 5-Year Development Fee Reports for fiscal 21-22. Mr. King, good evening.
Good evening. Can you see it up there? Okay. Well, good evening, board. I'm
Good evening.
here to go over our developer fee reporting for 21-22. So the annual requirement for government code is in order to enact and require fees. So the annual requirement that lets us enact fees on developer development is that we create this developer fee report. And what we'll look at this evening is the fees collected in 21-22. We'll look at fees, what we're going to spend our expenditures on this fiscal year. We'll look 5 years out, and then we'll demonstrate that the facility needs exceed fees collected to date, and fees must continue to be collected. It's important to note that developer fees are required to be deposited in a separate account or fund, and we use Fund 25 for that. And also, it's important to note that developer fees are not to be used for general fund expenditures. So our fees collected in 21-22. So the rates for residential construction is $6.65 per foot. Mitigation areas is $1. Commercial construction is 56 cents. And for 21-22, we collected $1,779,000 in developer fees. We also earned a little over $38,000 in interest. Projects using developer fees in 2021, we had total expenditures of $3,127,000. Most of that, a little over 2.9, was for construction of classrooms. That was for Fessler Portable Building preparation, and also for COP debt service payments for the construction of Jimenez Elementary. We had professional consulting and operational expenditures of $84,122. That was for indirect cost and also for our schoolworks report. These are school facilities needs analysis that are due every year. And then also relocatable classrooms, temporary housing, $80,000 for lease on portables. So our anticipated uses for 22-23 is about $497,000. The bulk of that is construction of classrooms, $453,000. That's for a Fessler site work and installation of new portables along with carpet for those portables. We have professional consulting and operational, $30,750. That's for the schoolworks report. And then temporary housing, relocatable classrooms, $13,000 for portable lease payments. Moving on to anticipated funding. So this identifies all the sources and amounts of funding anticipated to complete financing of school facilities identified by the district. So in 22-23, we anticipate to receive $30,000 of interest, a little over $1.3 million of school facilities fees, If you take those two numbers and add them to our beginning fund balance, you get $7.9 million. You add that to our beginning fund balance, 7.9. So you get a total funding of $9.3 million. With that, then you subtract out the 497 that we have budgeted for this year to spend. So you have a remaining balance of $8.8 million. So what can that $8.8 million be used for? So here's a 5-year projections outlook that's required of this report. So we have a total estimated project cost of $66 million to $85.1 million. That encompasses expansion of existing school sites and purchase and construction of new school sites. So what it shows is the need for facility fees will continue. Project costs will consume fees collected, and a needs analysis will provide more detail at a future date. So wrapping it up, we've described the anticipated uses for this year, going out 5 years, and we have shown that we do need to keep collecting the developer fees. So with that, we can answer any questions. The 665 is comprised of level 1 and level 2 fees. Level 1 is $3.42 and level 2 is $3.23.
Okay, got it.
This may be not quite the right time to ask about the temporary portable housing. Over the next few years, is that how we are going to accommodate the expansion to full day of our kinder and TK classrooms?
I'll let Mr.
And
Beecher
I
handle
don't
that.
mean specifically that they would be in those, but to free up space on campuses to allow for those full day classes.
So what's in there for anticipated uses now, in Mr. King's report is the stuff that we have on campuses today. So it's our ongoing investment. We'll use many strategies as we start to expand our campuses to house students all day. It'll be more than just these portables. It could be new construction. It could be brand new school campuses. It could be modular construction. It'll be a lot of different things depending on what that specific need is on that specific campus.
Okay. And you were, even with your microphone on, were very hard to hear. Sorry.
I can scoot
Was I the
closer.
only one that had a hard time hearing?
No, I was having a hard time hearing myself. So
Okay.
I need to be a little closer to the microphone.
And Matt, for clarification on Ms. Cordero's question, we also, I think, are limited in footprint on some of those campuses. So I think that's going to be a pretty detailed or reviewable probably process where we have to look at some of those options. So I think that's why is that why it's kind of just open to one grand number and not anything specific?
As far as Mr. King's report, that doesn't necessarily connect to the housing needs that will come from, and I apologize for the flowers that are in between us, Mr. Hans, that I can't make eye contact with you either. But thank you. Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
on
thank
your
you.
Presidency, Mr. Holland said.
Yeah.
But really that one of the reasons why we were wanting to bring in support for the facility master plan was that we do believe that there are going to be many complex decisions to make about exactly like you said, placement and footprint. And we wanted to make sure we had a broad process and their expertise in making those decisions.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then I had a question in regards to Mr. King, that the tally that you said would appear to roll over. And that's in Fund 25, the
Correct.
9 million? And so is that outside of the purview of the percent that we're allowed to take over from year to year? Or is that not part of that, or how are we able to do that? Roll
So
over?
in the developer fee fund, you can carry over funds from one year to the next. There isn't a restriction on that, like
Okay.
there might be for a federal grant or connected to the local control accountability plan. There's some provisions that control your ability to carry those funds over. But what you do need to do, which one of the purposes of Mr. King's report tonight, is you have to demonstrate that you don't have fees that are more than 5 years old. And so we always examine the age of our funds to make sure, as we're getting close to the end of the year, that there are no fees that are over 5 years old. And then we manage that process to make sure that that does not occur. And obviously our facility needs are pretty extensive in Santa Maria Bonita, so we generally don't have an issue with funds aging out like that.
And payment of the COPs can be part of that expenditure as described
Absolutely.
tonight.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion?
One clarifying question that I have is, in the resolution on page, for us, it's 113. Section 1 reads that the board has reviewed the information provided in the annual and 5-year developer fee report and finds it to be true and correct. And so obviously we're, basing our understanding of these figures on what you folks are providing us. How do we double check to ensure that our figures are accurate, just so that we ensure that that's correct?
Well, I take the figures directly from our unaudited actuals from last year, and then our auditors, then they review all of our funds 1 through 67 to make sure they're accurate. And as long as I didn't transpose a number, a 6 or a 9, then, we rely on our auditors and to self-check that. I transpose the reports I get from our accounting system and put them into the report.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll move that the Board of Education adopt Resolution 22-04 Annual and 5-Year Developer Fee Report for 2021-22 fiscal year as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Lara that the board adopt Resolution 2204 Annual and 5-Year Developer Fee Report for 21-22 fiscal year. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
Aye.
Passes. We'll move on to item 14C, Resolution 22-05, Resolution of the Board of Education of the Santa Maria Bonita School District designating certain committed funds as unrestricted general funds and revising previously committed funds. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hollinshead. What I have for you tonight is a new item for the board to consider. It may be a regular item each time we present an interim report or an unaudited actual or an adopted budget. So I'll kind of walk you through how we landed with this resolution tonight in some slides to really help me organize my thoughts and make sure that we have a chance to keep this straight, because there are several moving pieces. And like I said, it's a brand new item. Nope, that's. That's a preview. We'll be sharing the first interim report with you a little later on tonight.
And we do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want the first interim to sneak up on you, but it's coming later in the agenda. Okay, here we are. Commitments for fund balance. So again, this is a new function and procedure for school districts. In the enacted budget for 2022-23, the actions that were taken at the state level, depositing funds in the rainy day fund, and those actions created the local reserve cap. You may remember that there was reports coming out of CSBA connected to this requirement that school districts have no more than 10% of unassigned and assigned fund balance in their general fund. And when a district projects, and I apologize leaving the S off that word, projects that fund balance assigned or unassigned will exceed 10%, they have just a few options because by law, it can't be more than 10%. So they can spend down those excess amounts to get their fund balance down below 10%. They can reclassify a portion of those local reserves into committed fund balance. And committed fund balance is something that comes out of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The references inside the header to my resolution talks about the GASB components of fund balance, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that stuff. The auditor will share that with us when they come next round. The other option that I didn't put up here is you can ask for a waiver from the county, but since it's an item we can actually handle operationally in the school district, we'd rather do that than rely on a waiver from the county. So to commit funds, the school board has to consider and pass a resolution to formally commit those funds. Those commitments of fund balance stay in place until they're removed or altered by board resolution. So when we presented the unaudited actuals, I believe was the first time we made our commitments was in unaudited actuals. We provided a few items to the school board. The board acted to commit those. Where we are tonight, there are a lot of changes that have occurred inside of our budget, and I'll talk about those components in a section or in a later section. What we want the board to do is consider changing some of those commitments that were made at that time. So why might we need to change a commitment? So the calculated 10% threshold will change at each interim and every year as the amount of general fund expenditures also changes, because that cap is calculated based on 10% of unrestricted general fund changes. So we know we're going to have more or less money all the time. It's a moving target each time we report to the school board. So that number is always going to change. And that will change the amount that might need to be committed. The fund balance amount itself can change based on the resulting or projected surplus. Revenues can go up, expenditures can go up, they can also go down. So that will change the projected end result at the end of the year, which alters the amount of fund balance. So in the first one, the calculation of the cap can change. And in the second, the amount that has to fall below that calculation can also change. And finally, the estimated amounts from the underlying commitments can also require alteration. So we may come to the school board and say we need $10 million set aside to commit to, say, playgrounds like we spoke about earlier. And then we get a new estimate that says those playgrounds will now cost $9 million. So we'll come to the school board and ask you to uncommit some of those funds based on the underlying estimate that had been committed previously. Are there any questions about how those items might change? Good. Like I said, it's a new item. We'll get more comfortable with it. It's not the last time I'll talk to you about it this fiscal year. All three of these items have occurred bringing this resolution to the board tonight. So the amount of the combined unassigned and assigned fund balance has changed. So we have to fine tune our commitments a bit. Obviously, total expenditures have also changed with the 45-day budget revision. And as you'll see tonight and you hear from Mr. King with the first interim report. So that changes the threshold amount. And then also we have an updated estimate for our retiree health benefit that we need to commit some funds for. And so we want to update that amount as well. So if you look through that resolution, you'll see that those changes are all kind of spelled out in small pieces. And then that exhibit we attach to the back is the schedule of those new commitments.
Right?
It's hard to hear. I think your mic is off.
So the new commitment on the 22 million will go to 24 million. That's the 10% just
Correct.
Because of the.
In that last block where it talks about the other post-employment benefits.
Yeah.
Previously, our estimate was the $22,429,326, and has, as Mr. Lara indicated, gone up to $24,298,758.
Oh, I got nothing else.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? All right, we'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 22-05 designating certain committed funds and unrestricted general funds and revised previously committed funds as presented.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved by Mr. Lara and seconded by Ms. Corral that the board approve resolution 2205 designating certain committed funds as unrestricted general funds and revised previously committed funds. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollingshead?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 14D, certification of the first interim report for 22-23. Mr. King again.
Good evening again. So I will be going over our first interim budget. And so why do we have a first interim budget? Well, it's to meet the requirements of AB 1200 and to show that the district can meet its obligations in the current and 2 subsequent years. Also to discuss changes in the budget since adoption. Staff is in place. We know enrollment in CBEDs, and the state budget has been signed. So looking at our summary of assumptions, first looking at COLA. So budget adoption back in May and June, our COLA was 6.56%. That hasn't changed, but as I mentioned, at a 45-day budget revision, we received an additional LCFF-based funding increase COLA of 6.7. So we have a total COLA of 13.26%. Our enrollment in ADA at first interim enrollment increased by 138 to 16,707. Our estimated ADA for the year is 15,670. And then our estimated funded ADA for the year is 16,235. There's a couple different ways that funded ADA is calculated. So for funded ADA, you look at your current year ADA, prior year ADA, or a 3-year rolling average. And so we use the 3-year average because that gives us our highest ADA. And then also for 22-23, we're able to comply with the COVID-19 ADA relief requirements, and that increased our ADA by 362. So the COVID-19 ADA relief was included in the 22-23 enacted state budget that was enacted after our budget adoption. So now we're finally putting it into our budget at first interim. We just need to meet certain requirements for independent study in order to take this ADA relief. Moving on to revenue, our LCFF revenue increased by $18.8 million, 13.2, and then the rest is supplemental concentration grant of 5.6 million. We have our restricted program carryover of $3.4 million. Just to kind of remind you what the restricted carryover is. So back when we create the budget in May and June, we don't know what our carryover is for 21-22 for those restricted programs. So in August, we closed the prior year. And at that point, we know what our restricted carryover is from 21-22. So now we get to put that in, I put that in budget in September, but we do recognize it here at first interim. Also, we have COVID dollar carryover of 47 million. Lottery increase, 330, increase in local revenue. Also, our arts, music, instructional materials block grant 9.9. Sam talked about our learning recovery emergency block grant 32.8. I talked about it, the 45-day budget revision. So we did receive those 2 restricted block grants, but then the state budget took away our unrestricted discretionary block grant of $22.3 million. So what they did was they took away 22.3 of unrestricted dollars, but then they gave us 42-ish million dollars of restricted dollars between the 2 grants. And also new this year is a home to school transportation allowance of $1.6 million. Changes on the expenditure side, we do budget all of our restricted carryover, all of our supplemental concentration grant dollars, all the COVID carryover dollars of 47 million. We are budgeting all of the arts, music, instructional materials block grant for the playgrounds, the 9.9. The learning recovery block grant for this year, we're budgeting $7 million, $7.2 million. We are receiving 32.8, but we do have 5 years to spend these funds. So we're only budgeting a portion of those dollars this year. Our expanded learning opportunities program, $13 million was the ending fund balance from last year. So that gets budgeted now at first interim, special education, educator effectiveness grant. And basically at first interim, what we do is we rebalance our budget around program needs, our vacancy subs, and extra time. So looking at our changes from adoption to first interim, total revenue at adoption, 306 million. Now at first interim, 399.6. So it's an increase of $42.9 million. We have an increase on the expenditure side too. Went from 311 to 407. So an increase of $96.1 million on the expenditure side. So at budget adoption, we had deficit spending of $4.2 million. Now at first interim, there's deficit spending of $7.4 million. So it's an increase of $3.2 million. On the right side is kind of line by line, a little more detail of some of the increases like LCFF revenue 18.8. That's the result of the extra COLA and that ADA relief. These are big increases, big numbers we're seeing, but federal revenue 43.2, that's our COVID dollars and some restricted carryover. Other state revenue, almost $30 million. It's a mixture of a lot of different things, increase in the lottery, the arts music grant, COVID dollars, restricted carryover. Other local revenue increased by $1.5 million. That's interest, miscellaneous grants, donations. And we did receive 2 teacher credential grants of about $500,000. Looking on the expenditure side, salaries and benefits, it's just kind of tightening the budget around actuals and also budgeting some extra time for the expanded learning opportunities program. And then we have the big increases for books and supplies, services, and other operating expenditures. That's where we're budgeting a lot of our carryover COVID dollars, learning recovery, LCAP dollars, things like that. Then want to point out capital outlay increase of 42.2 million. That's that 9.9 for the playgrounds and also 30 million of COVID dollars. That 30 million under the capital outlay is for to improve our air quality at the schools and air circulation. So moving on, revenues at a glance. We've seen significant increases in our LCFF revenue since LCF revenue since it's been around. So back in 2012-13, it was about revenue is about 110 million. Now it's up to 399 million in 22-23. But we need to keep in mind there are a lot of one-time dollars in 22-23, about $67 million. And you'll see in 23-24 it does go back down because there's no one-time dollars. Same thing with expenditures. As a district's LCFF revenue increases, in turn, the expenditure should also increase. You'll see that with a little blip there in 2021. That was kind of during COVID times and we didn't have as many expenditures. But for 22-23, total expenditures are 403. Once again, there's a lot of those one-time dollars budgeted in that year. Moving on to our multi-year assumptions. These are the assumptions we use when creating the multi-year. So we remove one-time costs related to either one-time revenues or carryover a restricted ending balance. Restricted programs are balanced and we charge indirect costs when allowed. We do contribute our 3% of our total expenditures to our routine restricted maintenance program. And also we update our statutory rates if there are changes. So as I mentioned, at adoption, COLA is 6.56%. First interim is 13.26%. We did have that bump in our regular ADA and our funded ADA. So looking at our multi-year projections, We have our current year deficit spending of 7.4. That's increasing to 9.1 and 9.2 in the 2 out years. You'll notice in the 2 out years, both revenue and expenditures do drop. That's a result of kind of taking out those one-time dollars we have. Our revenue is growing on the LCFF side, but it's slower as a result of lower funded ADA. We do have our step and column salary increases included in the multi-year. And then I did want to point out, I kind of mentioned it, a learning recovery block grant, we're receiving all $32.7 million this year. It does fall to our ending fund balance. And this year we're budgeting about 7.2. And then for the next 2 years, we're budgeting $12.5 million each year. So that 12.5 is on the expenditure side, but there's no revenue up above it. The revenue is down below it under the, it's not revenue, it's our ending fund balance. It just kind of chips away at some of that ending fund balance. So moving on, fund balance in excess of minimum reserve. So this is required, a required form by the state, which basically says if your ending fund balance is greater than 3% reserve requirement, you need to state that, you need to state the dollar amount, and you need to state why. So that's what this is. For 22-23, we have our total assigned and unassigned ending fund balance of 35 million. We subtract out our 3% reserve requirement of 12.2. So we're left with 22.8 million that we need to substantiate, 13 million and then 19 million in the 2 out years. Down below is the our substantiation and reason why for this form here, set aside for future COP debt service payments. Now looking at enrollment, this goes back about 7 years. You'll see we peaked in 17-18 at 17,122. And in 22-23, we're at 16,707. So that's about 138 increase from last year. That has to do with our TK students. And then moving on, looking ahead, I just kind of put a couple quick snapshots of different periodicals, things to read. So Sacramento Bee, California had years of massive budget surplus, now could face a $25 billion deficit. That's actually now estimated to be about 24 billion deficit. CASBO, after years of record high education funding, California is projecting a 2.6 billion deficit for schools and community colleges starting in July. But we will get more information as the governor's 23-24 state budget proposal is released in January. So I do want to point out, even with the uncertainty and projected reduction in dollars available to school districts, the projected COLA for next year is over 8%. And the reason that is because of inflation. It's also talked on the state level that there's not going to be any room for any new ongoing commitments. And they've talked about even looking at some of the current commitments, for example, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, and looking at their budgets. So we'll see what they end up thinking about. Also, want to highlight over the past many years, we received COLA and also a lot of one-time dollars. So it does look like we're headed back to the COLA only days, at least for a few years. We had COLA only days many years ago, so it looks like we're going to be headed back to that at least for next year. So what's next? On January 19th, I'll be at the school services presentation of the governor's budget, and then we'll be back in March for the second interim report. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Can you go back to the slide with the estimated ADA for the school next year?
Enrollment?
Yeah, enrollment. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
That 16,707 is for this year.
For this year?
Yeah.
Do you see it's going up for the following school year? I'm just, do you?
Budget wise, we like to be conservative and go flat when we go, look at our multi-years when we estimate our revenue. But I can assume there's be more TK enrollment and ADA coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just because driving around and, getting off subject, just seeing all these ADUs and I'm just seeing the influx of these kids. That's why I'm just wondering if this number's going to go up with not knowing to, with more kids maybe coming into the district. If we're going to.
Well, and I think one of the things that is unique to our situation, at least from listening to people at CSBA, is that we have at least flat, if not increasing enrollment. Most districts are in declining enrollment, or certainly the urban districts are in significant declining enrollment. So we do have that. I think it'll be interesting, you know, Matt, in our greatest spike in years past, kind of tracked birth rates. And since my wife is at the hospital doing that very work, and sees a lot of people there, I think there's that. But there's also a strong push by the city and folks for development and increased units. So I think, you know, that's some place where, and I know I'm sorry, this is off topic a little bit.
That's why I didn't want to go.
No, but it is something that we need to consider, right? That there are implications with the plan for the city that really have a significant impact on us in that respect. And so we need to be really very intentional about our discussions and communication with the city on those things, because those kinds of things impact us, not just birth rate or not just, you know, that it'll be that development moving here.
Yeah,
and push to do that.
Sure. Thank you.
I think that's why we have somebody that pays attention to what the planning commission does. I think somebody from the district attends some of those meetings for just that reason.
And yeah, to get further off topic, I think we need to be able to advocate for ourselves in that position, not just, because I think that the passivity will bite us in the proverbial.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
In the section that talks about criteria and standards, there's a couple of boxes that are in the not met category. And I'm just wondering, is that the norm, or is that, or why is that?
So are we talking about the Form CI, the district certification of interim reports, where it gives a summary down below of the criteria and standards? Yeah. So the CI form, but yeah, it's basically like a table of contents for the back 30 pages of the budget with our criteria and standards. Kind of gives a summary of requirements or not requirements, if certain things are met or not. So the criterion standards are used by our County Office of Education to monitor the fiscal stability of school districts. And so since they are tasked with that job, for first interim for this year, see here, we have 6 categories that are not met. Historically, last year at first interim, we had 5. Previous first interim, it was another 5. They all kind of center around the same topics, kind of around revenue expenditures kind of increasing. The criterion standards provide a number of ways to break down the budget into kind of small little pieces that are really important. And it's a way to get information quickly about the budget. And so if a section says not met, then in the criterion standards, I have to give an explanation why. So if you're on the CI form and you're like, okay, well, why is that not met? You can go to the back and look at that explanation. So, but at times having a check mark and not met column is not necessarily bad. So like the first one that says average daily attendance, it says funded ADA for any of the current or 2 subsequent fiscal years has not changed more than 2% since budget adoption. So they're saying, has it changed more than 2%? And ours has. Ours is actually increased by 2.5 to 6% from budget adoption. So that is a good thing for us. Additional ADA, additional revenue. So it's saying we didn't meet it. We didn't meet it within their scope of their 2%. So we were above that. And like, for example, in this example, the reason why is that adoption budget, we use a flat enrollment, not first interim. We have that COVID relief that I talked about, where additional funded ADA of 362 for this year. So that pushed just out of that 2% range to 2.5 for this year and so forth. So, but to go back to your original question, yes, this is typical at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah. The increase in enrollment, is it all attributed to TK enrollment? Or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
It is almost all attributed to transitional kindergarten.
So we've really not grown in any of the other grade levels.
Not in a significant way, no.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just curious.
Further discussion or questions?
I'll move that the Board of Education issue a positive certification of the 2022-23 first interim report and certify that the Santa Barbara County Superintendent of School to the Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools that the Santa Maria Bonita School District will be able to meet its financial obligations for the 2022-23, 2023-24, and 2024-25 fiscal years as presented.
I'll second.
You're off.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Ms. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Valencia that the board approve or issue a positive certification of the 2022-23 first interim board or first interim report and certify that the Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools to the Santa Maria Bonita School District that will be able to meet its financial obligations for the 2022, 23, 24, 25 fiscal years. Roll call.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye. He gets the speed reading record. You go, John.
I was Buddy the Elf all day. I've had a lot of sugar. Item 14E, Resolution 22-06, resolution authorizing filing of applications for the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Plan Program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hollingshead. This item is here tonight as part of the effort we talked a little bit about during the developer fee item and the need to create new housing for all of our transitional kindergartners, communities, 4-year-olds that we'll be welcoming to our campuses shortly. As part of our process of seeking out a facility master plan partner, we asked for support from the selected provider. In this case, it was the DLR group. We asked for support in pursuing funds through the school facility program, the state's program for providing a match to schools for investing in school campuses. And their advice was, and our work with them was to bring this item for the school board to consider so that they can, with our input and their assistance, file applications for each of our campuses in the hopes of gathering as much funding as possible to create opportunities, expanded opportunities for full day kindergarten and transitional kindergarten. So that is the nature of this item, and the wording is all in compliance with the requirements of that program so that we can pursue those applications and get as much funding as possible. And the reason I say it that way is that what they're going to do is go through these applications and try and make sure that each school district that applies gets some funding. And if they get through each school district and they still have funding, they'll circle back through the school districts again and just make sure that as evenly as possible, they make those funds available. So we're going to apply for every campus in the hopes of getting more than just one through the process. So I'm bringing that for the board's consideration tonight in the hopes of getting some state match.
Sounds like a good strategy to me.
Facilities. Yep.
Yep.
So I would move that the Board of Education.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh,
Ms. Cordero.
sorry.
Mr. Valencia.
Yeah, one question that I had, based on the resolution, it reads on page 130, whereas the district currently operates full-day transitional kindergarten at Arianas Elementary School and Miller Elementary School. And so I was just curious as to why that only exists at those two sites right now.
Mm-hmm. So Arianas Elementary was like our first experiment, if you will, relative to all-day kindergarten. Before there was transitional kindergarten, they started piloting all-day kindergarten. I believe that it was before UTK, but what I do know is they were the first place to do it. And then recently we looked at other school sites to see if there were any others who could also offer a full day program. And the reason we had to really look closely is that our facilities are so impacted that most of our campuses cannot offer an all-day program at kinder and a transitional kindergarten. And so the two that do have the facilities that they need and allow us to make that commitment by resolution for these two campuses is Miller and Arianas. The rest are too impacted to commit to a full-day program at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, accept the motion.
I'll move that the Board of Education approve Resolution 22-06, authorizing filing of applications, plural, for the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Ms. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Valencia that the board approve resolution 22-06. Roll call.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye.
Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Aye.
Ms. Cabral?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 14F, resolution 22-07, resolution approval of the use of pupil grant eligibility for the construction of the Bill Libin, AKA Measure T Elementary School. Oh, Mr. Beecher's back.
And I'm here again to help the board understand what's happening with this item. Thank you, Mr. Hollinshead. So this resolution comes to the board tonight seeking a similar outcome, maximizing the amount of funding that the district can receive for the construction of new school facilities. We've been working with another consultant, Chris DeLong of Hancock Park and DeLong in Sacramento. He's been helping us make sure that we maximize our eligibility for new school construction, which is kind of its own process. And then in this case in particular, making sure that while we are complete with our construction of Bill Libin Elementary, and we finance that construction with developer fees and with a huge commitment from the community with the passage of Measure T. We're seeking reimbursement now for the state through their program to get as much funding as possible. The original application totaled about $14 million in reimbursement. Now, 3 years later, we're going through the process of clarifying that application for funding for what actually occurred for our new enrollment amounts, and then calculating a new eligibility. As a result of that eligibility calculation, we actually do not have eligibility for non-severe SDC classrooms. That I believe is an impact of our movement towards making sure that our special education or our students on IEPs are included in general education classrooms. So they're not, tracked separately in a special day class, they're in the general education setting. And so that what used to calculate forward as a projection for students in a special day classroom disappeared. They're now in general education classrooms. And so what this resolution does is ask the Office of Public School Construction permission to recommend, to have them recommend to the State Allocation Board the ability for us to use general education dollars to reimburse those classes, the construction of those classes that were previously designated as special day classes. If that makes sense. When we planned that school, we figured those students would be sitting in special day classrooms, and today they're not, and projected in our eligibility, they're not. So what we want to do is say, let us use general education eligibility to fund the construction of those classrooms. And that's what it means by assist with the construction of the two non-severe special education classrooms. Really what that means is the construction cost, provide us that reimbursement towards that construction cost of those two classrooms. And so this item was worked on by Mr. DeLong and then shared with you tonight so that we can approach the Office of Public School Construction and potentially capture a dollar amount that is about $1.5 million more than we would be able to otherwise on that application. And this is a really important time for us to maximize the amount of money we can set aside for capital facilities.
So, Matt, if we were to receive this grant funding, it essentially is paying us back for money that we expended to build those 2 classrooms.
Mhm.
And that money can be applied toward what we still owe on the building, or in maybe making some modifications in the classrooms to utilize them for regular ed?
Actually,
Or where does that money get used?
it would be used for additional new construction of new classrooms. It could be, in my mind, it could be portable buildings, modular buildings, or permanent construction for universal
Oh,
transitional
okay.
kindergarten classrooms. Yeah, these are dollars we spent when we built Measure T, and these are dollars we're hoping to receive from the state to reimburse, exactly as you said, Ms. Cordero, reimburse those dollars we invested, and we would absolutely leverage those on future facilities.
Got it.
Mhm.
And I think I have a corollary to what you're asking, Ms. Cordero said. So do I understand that they're not necessarily designated specifically to be used on the live-in campus? They can be used for other expenditures.
Correct.
Thank you.
Because we already use the dollars at Live-In. Now the
Right.
state's saying, here's the money we would have given you if we could have paid
Right.
you in advance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
More discussion or?
No, I was gonna make the recommendation, but feel free.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll make the recommendation to approve resolution 22-007, approval of the use of pupil grant eligibility for construction of the Bill Live-In, AKA Measure T Elementary School is presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lara, seconded by Ms. Cordero, that the board approve resolution 22-07. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Ms. Cabral.
Aye.
Moving on to item 14G, award of bid number 5242, installation of district provided camera system. Where's Ms. McKnight? I expected to see her. It's you.
Good
Brian.
evening. Patricia McKnight cannot be with us this evening,
Oh,
and
okay.
we're already planning on presenting together. So I will do my best to
Awesome.
fill her shoes. And when I struggle, I will stare at Mr. Beecher and he will bail me out. Agreed.
Not so subtle body language. I
Yes.
like it.
Got it. We'll get through it together. Hopefully. Trying something new. That's gonna work now. So, what I really want to do is spend the first part of this is just kind of bring you back up to speed about how we got here again today, because it took us quite a bit of time and quite a bit of steps. And the board was involved in some of the steps. And probably most importantly, what I just need to do is just thank you once again for bringing safety to the focus for our schools. It's something we hear again and again. And the board's been committed to safety, and Dr. McDuffie's been committed to that. This is just one of many things that we've been doing, but it's an important piece. And we know that our junior highs, and that's where we're starting. I'm really excited to get this project in place. And so our research of this began last spring. The district had some small camera outfitted at different school sites, usually as a result of like some slight vandalism. And so we put up a couple cameras to try to address it. Those camera systems were about 3 or 4 different brands and varieties, and none of them were really that good. The thing we saw again and again is a real struggle. When the principal had to go back and review the footage, it was really difficult. And so they spent a lot of time, and really what we were hoping to get, we couldn't get. So when we started looking at what we want, ease of use was at the top of the list. But as well, we knew serviceability is important because there's going to be a lot of them. We want to make sure that, we can service them well, and durability. So I brought these for you. They're a little heavy to check out. So after reviewing for we looked at 3 major vendors that support schools in this. Verkada was the one that was chosen as the very best option for our school district. And so those are Verkada branded cameras you're holding right now. The next step for us was to walk the sites to determine the best locations. And we started this at TK. So in the spring of last year, we identified where's, let's put out some cameras just to make sure that they are as durable as we think, that they are as easy to use as we think, just to make sure that we're heading down the right corridor. We got great feedback right away. Really excited from the staff. I think within the first week of them being up, there was a need to review one of them, and Dr. Williams, who was the principal at the time, was super excited. He was able to use one of the cameras to increase some student supervision needs. So you may recall that back in August, we actually brought this to you for the purchasing part of the cameras. So today we're talking about the installation, because back in August, we created the mechanism for us to purchase these cameras. So we have that in place now, and that's a CMAS contract that we can use as needed. So for instance, if we find after we get this phase 1 done, if there's additional cameras we need, we can once again come back to the CMAS contract and purchase the additional cameras we might need at that point. So it makes it really nice. So it doesn't have to go through the entire process again, just to add one camera, if you will. Right away, after we kind of did our initial walk and started getting feedback earlier this year, we knew we needed to increase the initial numbers we thought we would do in phase 1. So initially phase 1 was only going to be Tommy Kuntz, just to kind of get used to this new system. But the need was way too large, and we like all school districts and other industries still struggle with gaining staff. And so with struggles with supervision, we knew getting additional cameras would be a really good idea if we could do it quicker. And so we did. So we did those additional site walks in at Fessler and El Camino and Arianes at that time with the site admin, walking the entire campus, looking for those areas of highest concern. But as you see, they're going to have quite a bit of coverage coming to them. And then really the items in blue now is really where we are today. Most recently, so we posted this bid for the installation of these cameras. The vendors who were interested came out. We toured all of those sites with the interested vendors so they can get an idea of the work. This is, installing a camera doesn't sound like a lot, but really it's pretty intense work to pull this cable through the building, put the conduit in place to make sure the cable's protected. It takes a lot of time and energy to do each one of these installs. Part of the bid process always is to provide an opportunity for the vendors to have questions and answers addressed. And so we had many of those, and we were able to address all of those to make sure that they're all understanding what our needs are. And then this bid closed out on November 16th. And so with the board approval, our plan is to begin installations in January. But I have a couple other slides I wanted to show you before we ask for that recommendation to be approved. Just important for you to know, this is a cloud-based solution. So that means that our staff can get to this whenever they need to from any location, from any time, because it is cloud-based. This just gives you kind of a preview of what this looks like currently. This is just a screenshot of what some of the pilot cameras look like over at TK. The middle two is a hallway. So as a person or a student walks down one end and they exit, they show up in the other camera, as you can imagine. And the staff are able just to click on this and then go deeper to a screen that gives you then the full screen review. And then from that full screen review, you can scrub left and right to go to any date you need to. They go back 30 days to any specific time. And usually that's how it's going to be used. If there was some sort of incident or concern that happened last Tuesday, it was about 7:45 in the morning. And so they're going to be able to click on that and go right to it. From there, they can take a screenshot. From there, they can download a video if they need to share it with a parent or a community member of concern. All that's available inside of that platform. And again, super easy to use. This is what we included for the vendors, and this is really what we documented when we walked with all the different site administrators. So each one of those arrows represents a different camera. So you can see there's a significant number of cameras going in. We hope this will really help with the concerns over site supervision. It's going to make a huge improvement. So this is Tommy Kuntz. That's the arrow. So you look at Tommy Kuntz, there's a yes question.
What's DIF? Location of, IDF. Oh, the location of the camera.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
When you look at Tommy Kuntz from a Google Maps, it's a big campus. There's a lot of corners. There's a lot of space to cover. You can really kind of feel that when you look at this picture as opposed to this. This just seems like some squares with an arrows. But when you really look at this and then you think about, wow, there's a lot of places here. It's a big campus, a lot of students. This was really going to help them out. Of course, we did the same thing at Fessler. And this was a great tool for the bidders to be able to understand exactly what our intent is. And then this is how we'll keep them accountable. This is where each one of those cameras is going to be installed, and we'll go through a whole checkout process with them. overlooking Fessler. They had some new construction that was done on the far left there. That's why it's out there in that white space. They have a new locker room. And once now that that's up, we're going to attach some cameras to there to get out into the playfield. Arianis. Point out in the center there, you might see some the green ones that go over the quad. That's a highly used area there during breaks. Students out there playing, having a good time. It's great. And so again, though, we want to make sure we have coverage of that area. The overhead of Arianis. And this is El Camino.
And Brian,
Yes.
can you go back to that? There's no placement there, counselor, and that center building?
So I think, John, there's some on, sorry, President Hollins said, there's some on the A over there, but we may have to go around and see if we need some additional cameras. And that was part of our conversation with them. All the administrators understood. This is phase one. We're going to learn that there are some gaps, right? The other things too is we can do some kind of interesting things just by pointing cameras in different directions. They may be at the same, install, but there's no reason why we can't point it in a different direction if we already have good coverage. So, we didn't want to try to blitz and get everything because we just knew that wasn't really possible, but let's do a really good coverage and then come back and see what we miss and where we can improve. This is all new to us. And then of course, from here, we'll see what that might look like for the elementaries. An overview of El Camino. So that brings us, that's how we arrived to tonight. You'll see in your board packet that we had 4 different vendors submit. And you have one that's considerably less expensive, which is always kind of exciting. The good news is there's a performance bond in place that helps protect us if anything were to happen there. If you ask me more about performance bond, you're going to see me stare at Mr. Beecher.
How about the question that inevitably gets asked? Why is the one bid significantly? Was there an indication as to why that was higher? Did they misunderstand something or?
No, we always have those
Sounds like you
additional.
made it clear.
Yeah, we always have those additional, follow-up conversations to make sure. But again, the performance bond is in place to make sure. We did check references with that group. They had at least 5 projects that they shared with us were equal size, similar type of project. So they definitely have a history of doing this type of work.
What's their accountability if we have something go wrong with them and they need to come back?
Yeah, there's a 1-year warranty that's.
Well, not that, I mean,
Yeah.
with that, something goes haywire in the system, say at 2 of the schools at the same time, what's
With the wiring.
getting them here to
Oh, how fast they have to respond?
till they get there?
Yeah.
Get this
So
back?
most of these things we're going to be able to respond because we're going to take management over almost immediately
Okay.
as the IT team. So it's not that that this is an ongoing contract.
Oh, okay.
This is one-time funds for just the installation, and then the IT team at that point will manage it.
Okay.
And that's the same way we've done the other smaller projects. We've got some outside help to go ahead and get them installed, and then IT has taken over the management at that point.
So they're gonna do all the hard wiring, like you said, the
Yeah.
conduit, running the cables and making
Mhm.
sure there's no.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
So that was my question as well, only because they were so far away and
Yes.
then the local one, I didn't know who was gonna be
Yeah.
managing, but if it's the IT department, then.
Our team will be much happier managing this Verkada system than the other ones we've had in the past. It's been a real struggle.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
I have a clarification question.
I'm sorry.
If we, let's say hypothetically, we only got 2 bids, can we, or how often do we, resubmit for the bidding process? So let's say we were not content with just 2 bids.
Yeah.
Can we say, hey, we're going to open it up again, the process to see if we can, get more competitive bids? Because by seeing at least these 4, right, we've been in situations, right, where there's only 1 or 2 bids, which, puts us potentially in a tough spot because there's no kind of comparison, right? So do we have the ability to do that?
I'm going to use my Patricia McKnight lifeline and let Mr. Beecher respond to that.
Sure. And I too would really like for Patricia to answer that question. She has a lot more experience with the processes, with hands-on than I do. But what I know is that there's always the opportunity to reject all bids. And that's a clear right for the district and for the school board. But what can happen is, and especially in a small bid compliant climate like Santa Maria Bonita, we don't always get a large number of bids, and many times we only get a single bid. But what can happen if we do reject a small response and go back out, it's a pretty extensive process to prepare a bid package, and you can potentially have the community lose interest in participating. So we'd have to be really careful about selecting the times to do that. One of the ways that we make sure that if we do have a limited response, that we know that we're getting a decent bid or a decent cost on that response is by having a good project estimate. So we start with a number in our mind, and then if the numbers come in on the vendor or small number of vendors close to that project estimate, then we know that we've still got a pretty good bid. If it goes the other direction, then we can reject all bids and then either rescope the project or look deeper into the mechanics of the cost, see if there was a piece of the cost estimate that we missed, and try and get to the validity of the pieces. So that's I think the best response I can give you on that one.
And we did that recently
Mhm.
with something. I don't remember what the project was, but we rejected everything and would send it all out to bid again. And I think you said 11 vendors looked at
Yeah,
the
that's right.
stuff, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
to get 4 bids, I don't think that's a bad
No, I was really happy. to see
ratio of
4 bids.
response.
Yeah, so yeah, we started with, I think it was 11. And that's pretty typical. You'll have a large number come out when they do the site walk, and then they get a better understanding of what that entails, right? And if that's really a commitment they want to make once they get a better understanding of construction, because really this work is all based around the type of construction you have. That's what really delineates how much energy is required to get this done. So you're absolutely right. It's pretty common to start with a large number and it kind of dwindles down a little bit. Having 4 numbers makes us feel pretty comfortable.
So, and I'll add to that, the large number of.
Matt, can you just
Do I need to be closer?
speak closer into your mind? Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm gonna move the whole thing closer to me because I can't seem to sit in the right spot, so I apologize. But one of the things that happens is on that job walk day, not only are the general contractors out there, but all the subcontractors are out as well, because the contractors will be asking the subs to bid their pieces. And so the subcontractors also want to put their boots on the ground and take a look at the job so that they have a really good idea of how to estimate it. So you may have 11 people, only 5 or 6 are intending to bid, and the other ones are just wishing to participate as a subcontractor. So that's one of the other reasons why the number falls from 11 to 4.
Yes.
Due to the delicacy of cameras, and how do we vet the crews that are coming in and installing them? Are they live scanned? Do we know if they're?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the staff, when they're going to work, when students are present, we always have them be part of that process. So that's always part of the bid. For this one, it will still be a requirement, but it's worth pointing out that we're going to try to do as much of this work when students aren't around, just because it's going to require a lot of ladder work. And so part of that was placed into the bid to kind of minimize that time, not for the reason you bring up, but coincidentally, not a bad thing. But regardless, in this project, anyone who steps on site is going to have to go through that process. And there's a whole paperwork trail we do to maintain that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Valencia?
And is this bid just the cost of the installation, or does it include the cameras as well?
Yeah, this is strictly just the installation.
And do you know what the cost of the cameras are?
Yeah, I think we spent close, and I'll have to follow up in a board memo for you, because we had to do the initial phase 1. And then when we decided to grow it, we had to buy a second batch of equipment. So I want to make sure I get you the right number. So let me follow that up in a Friday memo. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then as a follow-up question, do we have any references of other districts similar to ours, elementary, middle school, or in this case, middle school, since that's where it's being applied first? It seems like of their pros and cons or successes or unintended things that were overlooked, right?
Yeah.
What has been the experience of other districts that you're aware of?
Yeah, I mean,
technology?
I think for us in our middle school, like a lot of middle schools, definitely high schools, have already gone through this process. So we've had the opportunity to hear kind of what that looks like. It's interesting. I know a couple local districts, I won't call out by name, but I know that they had some large camera installations they put in place, and now they're looking to go to the model of Arcata that we are. Again, it's just ease of use and durability. So we've made a good selection, I believe, as we see some of the folks who have that long-term experience are actually going in line in the direction that we are.
And do you know if we've asked for any feedback from families, students, staff around their feelings around this technology? Just the sense, right, of now you're in an environment where cameras are everywhere, right? So there's that kind of that sense of that loss of privacy. I obviously also see the pros, right, of being able to, monitor when, there's a fight on campus or if there's graffiti, right? There's many benefits, but I'm wondering what, if any, might be like the cons of something like this.
Sure. I know that safety always ranks really high when we do surveys with our family. That's always one that comes up. And again, I know it's been a commitment for the board and Dr. McDuffie. I don't know that we've asked specifically about comfort level with cameras. What I can tell you is there's always a notification process that occurs. So before we put the cameras over at Tommy Kuntz, we worked with Dr. Williams to make sure that all the families were aware that cameras were now going to be placed on campus. And for the most part, they're pretty positively received.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions or comments? So I'll accept a motion.
I'll move that the Board of Education approve the award of a contract for bid number 5242, installation of district-provided camera system to Exact Technology Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $249,000 upon presentation of the bonds as presented.
I second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Cordero, seconded by Ms. Corral, that the board approve the award of contract bid for contract for bid number 5242, installation of district approved camera system to Exact Technology Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $249,000 upon presentation of the bonds as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. I didn't even notice Patricia wasn't here. Oh, is she watching? All right. Item 14H, discuss and approve job descriptions, executive assistant to the superintendent, executive liaison to the superintendent. Dr. Cameron, good evening.
Good evening, President Hollingshead and members of our board and Dr. McDuffie. Yes, I'm presenting two job descriptions for your approval from the superintendent's office. The first one is the executive assistant to the superintendent. This new position is created to replace the existing position, the former position of executive secretary to the level of other comparable school districts of similar size and revenue. The job description details the scope of the responsibilities and is updated to what most districts have today and what the needs of our school district needs in terms of our superintendent. The second job description is the executive liaison to the superintendent. This is a newly created position. It's unique and designed to assist the superintendent's office as a secretary and an administrative liaison. This position would be bilingual and preferably multilingual. The position will serve as a liaison and assist the superintendent, serve as an interpreter for the superintendent's office with non-English speaking parents and community members, and they will assist with the translation of written materials as needed. My recommendation is that the Board of Education discuss and approve the job description as presented this evening.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, Dr. Cameron.
You're welcome.
I can start with at least with the comment, and that certainly is that recognizing what Kristen and her predecessors have done in their office and elevating the level of their professionalism and recognizing that, I think is long due or overdue. And so I appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate the thoughtfulness in the creation of the executive liaison position in a manner that reflects our community liaisons and that want for connectedness and communication with the district and specifically your office, Dr. McDuffie. So I think, I appreciate both of those, Dr. Cameron, and the thoughtfulness behind them. And
Thank you.
and well played.
I guess my one question would, and I'm, speaking traditionally, the executive assistant or, whatever we called that position at the particular time to the superintendent was, to the best of my recollection, as long as I've been here, has been someone who has kind of moved up through the ranks and ended up in that position. With the creation of the new position, I am curious what sort of interview process / assessment / maybe even a test, if you will, might be required to fill that position.
Well, it's going to be a new position, so we're going to be looking at clerical skills of the candidate as well as their ability to communicate. And what's important and what's going to be different about this position is really they're going to be representing the superintendent's office out in the community as well as in the superintendent's office. And so we'll be looking for that individual that can have those leadership abilities that I mean, really a unique position, someone who represents that arm as well as the clerical piece, and of course, being able to communicate with parents and our community at large. So to answer that question, I didn't really answer it. We would need to be looking for questions that cover both of those areas.
Well, and I'm asking that simply because, when we use the word liaison and want someone who is bilingual or multilingual, I know that I don't know specifically or exactly, but I'm not sure what kind of, clerical types of skills are required for those positions. Might that be viewed as something that could be acquired from on-the-job experience rather than or some training, as opposed to coming with that, in addition to the communication, personality, relationship piece, because I think personally, those are probably the more critical qualities that
Right.
that person would have or should
Right.
have.
Yes, and so they have both of those experiences, which is part of what the job description would entail and has in it. Absolutely.
Good. Entertain the motion.
I'll recommend that the Board of Education discuss and approve the job descriptions as presented.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Mr. Valencia and seconded by Mrs. Cordero that the board, I believe, now approve the job descriptions as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And there are no discussion items this evening. How about them apples? Calendar of upcoming meetings, activities, and events. Winter break will commence on December 19th through January 9th, 2023. New Year's holiday will be observed on January 2nd of 2023. The schools and district offices will be closed. Martin Luther King holiday will be observed on January 16th, 2023. Schools and district offices will be closed then as well. And the regular board meeting for January will be scheduled on January 18th of 2023. Board and superintendent reports, Mr. Lada. What you got?
Just nothing really, just welcome Mrs. Cabral to the school board.
Thank you.
And just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I have nothing else to report.
Except you're well.
And our health. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cabral.
I'm Neil.
Welcome.
Speak into the microphone there.
I'm new. Let's see. I did go to the CSBA and I was sick then too, so my recollection of most of the classes I went to is not, it's not that much. But I did take note. I did go to the TK one and there were recommendations after following a San Diego district and how they expand out to the community to bring in TK teachers, which I thought was interesting. So they go to people that are now childcare providers and they offer them to go to community college and take the classes needed and then just bring them in as teachers. And so I thought it was, you know, and it also brought upon the difficulties of 4-year-olds who are not possibly potty trained. And so thinking of that, and I never thought of that. So difficulty also in the curriculum. Well, not difficulty, but it will have to be a different curriculum for a 4-year-old opposed to a kindergartner. Probably more play education with that. So it was very interesting to hear about that. And then I also did the master's in governance to prepare for the role that I'm sitting in today. So those were very good foreseeing of the role. And thank you.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight. And I would reiterate what Mr. Laura has stated about wishing everyone a very, very happy holiday season and a time to rest and rejuvenate. Congratulations to Maggie, she's waving back there. I think everybody knows that I'm part of that Altrusa group that it runs one of those 2-week-long Christmas tree raffle events. And I'm actually upright and my eyes are focused. So I'm recovering. We did have a very, very successful event at our new location this year, which was Kia of Santa Maria. And I mentioned this now and previously because one of the primary values that our Altrusa Club holds is to support education and our teachers. And when we first established our club, the very first monies that we used in our community were to support teachers right here in our district. And we continue to do that and to support other community events that benefit, the kids that go to our schools. Shoes for Students. We've done things with the homeless shelter. We have an Astra Club at one of our junior highs. A lot of what we do is to support the students in our community. So I just want to give a really big shout out to everybody, employees, families that came to support our event. We were extremely pleased with our new location, and there were several families that came to claim their trees that their kids come attend, one of our schools. So it's a very heartwarming event. It's a lot of work, many hours, but definitely worthwhile. And I just really appreciate the support from both SMEA and CSCA who do trees, along with 5 or 6 of our other actual classes. And I think Maggie told me that 18 or so of our 39 trees had someone involved with them who was or is an employee in our district. So that speaks volumes for what we do. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I just want to say a couple of things. I was really appreciative seeing that in our board packet, a lot of our classified staff, especially our bilingual aides, at the high school level, we call them BIAs, right? The bilingual, bicultural folks that work with our teachers in the classroom. Many of them have now gone from part-time to full-time. And that was some feedback that we received from teachers in the LCAP meetings. And I believe many folks that were doing that position, they would move on to other positions that were full-time so that they could be eligible for benefits and things like that, right? So I'm really happy to see that we are honoring those employees, right? Because they have a really good connection with many of our students, and also present many of our future teachers, because many of them are dabbling in education or have an interest. And I see how at the high school level, many of our BIAs connect really, really well to our students. You know, many of them are in college, right? Or many of them are already working with families, and many of them live in the community. And so I see what a strong asset that is for our district. And I'm really happy to see that. I also wanted to mention that a couple of weeks ago, there was like a book distribution event, I believe, for our migrant students. So it was really wonderful to see, right, that our young people are getting a bunch of different books. And I was reminded of also like the importance of having our young people read literature where they get to see themselves, right? Because you can't be what you can't see. And so it's so important that our young people be exposed to literature that shows them as future doctors, you know, future presidents of the United States, future educational leaders here. And so I did notice a lack of diverse textbooks from that distribution, but my hope is that those were some books that we kind of needed to kind of let go of. And then hopefully in the future, we can be more mindful of that, of making sure that our students get to see themselves. At the CSBA conference we just attended, many of us as school board members, where we do many of our professional learning, that was a major emphasis from some of the workshops that I looked at, is just how critical it is for our young people to see themselves and then learn other stories so that they could build empathy for other communities that are not where they're from. I also was really appreciative of seeing a couple of weeks ago that we now have some nutritional information available for our families who want to dig a little bit deeper regarding the nutritional content of the food that their children are consuming in our schools. And I would love to see some type of follow-up workshop on that kind of teaches our families how to navigate that website, so that how to, I'm not sure how user-friendly that website is at this point, since it's probably pretty new, but something that like a step-by-step process that shows our families how to learn how to navigate that, so that they could see how much sugar is in some of the beverages, or how many calories, right, something might have, if that's a concern. I did receive a note from one of our educators recently. And I don't know if it was for a specific event or something, but they noticed that there was a lot of packaging within packaging. So it was like a lot of just like plastic waste, if you will. And apparently some of the food or the snacks that the children were having were also pretty high in sugar. So this educator noticed how after they consumed those snacks, as happens to many of us, there was a big sugar crash. So that was interesting to note, right, of the connection between what our young people are eating at school, and then, of course, their behavior in the classroom. And so it's clear to me that there's a major interest, in this topic. The more I learn about, food, the more, interested I become in, promoting healthy outcomes. I heard at the CSBA conference, the California School Board Association conference, that what our children eat is one of the most critical things that they learn in school, which I thought was a fascinating idea, right? We tend to think of the classroom, but the cafeteria itself, right, is a place of learning, right? And where they're making decisions, right, about what they're eating sometimes, and hopefully making healthier choices. So I'm really excited to continue to progress that work, so that we are promoting healthy eating for all of our young people, especially given the fact that, there's many unhealthy outcomes, right? Like things like diabetes, that is very prevalent in our communities. Another thing that I wanted to mention is I was shopping in town recently, and one of my former students that I had a couple of years ago now has a son at Libin Elementary. And so that was very, very special to bump into that student. And one of the things she mentioned to me, however, was that she really wants her child to be bilingual in English and in Spanish. But currently, I don't believe at Libin we offer that quite yet. I know that we're in the process of having conversations about expanding our dual immersion program. And so there's definitely a need for that at all of our sites. A lot of our families want our children to be bilingual or maybe even trilingual, as we know that in our community, there are many folks that speak multiple languages. So I'm looking forward to continue to receive updates, right, around our progress around that area, because I know it's a priority. I was also happy to see that at the conference we attended in San Diego recently, that there was a big focus on mental health, not just looking at the mental health of our students, but also of the staff, right? Who are the folks that are looking after our young people? How are our teachers doing, right? How are our administrators doing? We know that in this profession, it is an often thankless job. It is an often really long hours job, right? Most of us don't get into this for the money or for the short hours, and so I say that to just recognize the hard work of our staff. I want to thank you for looking out for our young people. They deserve they deserve us to be our best, but it is so essential that we're also taking care of ourselves. So I'm hoping that during this winter break, you all get a chance to rest, to spend some time with your families, so that we could be the best version of ourselves for our young people. And I believe that wraps up my comments. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so part of this evening's board discussion was open to us to speak and kind of debrief about what we experienced at the CSBA conference. And so in light of what you were talking about, Mr. Valencia, or in connection to that, there was a strong undertone of connectedness, and in the context of social emotional learning with our kids and health of staff and families. And some of that was involved with the notion of community schools, which was one of the presentations that I attended, and the community schools that were recognized in a lot of the literature from the Learning Policy Institute are in Oakland. And so the Oakland school system committed several years ago to the community school model. And that it is a lot more than it actually sounds like. What it is involved is multi-layered, but I think it's something for us, it's worthy of consideration and looking into in light of some of the discussions we've had about having family centers on some of the campuses or throughout the district, our counseling services and all those other wraparound services, and their notion of it as treating or teaching the whole child, and also what you're you're speaking about, even about nutrition, just that comprehensiveness. And there, I think the reason that it's important, at least as a consideration, and I was talking with the superintendent from Guadalupe because they've applied for one of the initial grants for this, is even in the time since my children have gone through school, because they're done, there's more and more things being asked of us in schools. There's more being put upon teachers. There's more being put around the surrounding communities, and those different tie-ins. And so it's just a way of really making a really cohesive model for that to happen efficiently, and so that the adults also have support in doing that work, not just thinking about small, I guess the lingo now is silos, right? But separating all those things and having them done independently, and this really brings that to kind of fruition. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. Not one that we hadn't heard of before, but it was the presentation kind of distilled it down and made it even more interesting. I also, almost every year I go to see what the people from Californians Together present. They're the folks who are behind a lot of they created the state seal, or sorry, excuse me, the pathway, the pathway for biliteracy. And so they always have really great information. The people who presented this year was the Azusa School District, and they have adopted the SEAL model, which I think is the Sobrato Early Academic Language model, and committed to that. It's based on research by Lori Olson and the folks at UCLA and at Loma Linda, and it's pretty profound what they're talking about, at least as far as dealing with some of the things that we've talked about a lot lately, which are not just our kids that are here and trying to become literate in English, but that they're coming to us from a dual language household or a single language household, but they're basically trying to learn two languages at the same time, and that consideration, and then also, so what classroom setting really fits that and supports that, and then how to support teachers in delivering that kind of information. And so, I think it's continuing to behoove us to not just look at a dual language immersion specific program, but how we can get some of those principles onto our campuses and those thoughts and processes on our campuses before we go to that. I talked with one of our DLI, was Maria Garcia, was she a TOSA or a coach? She was a TOSA. Yeah, I made them both. Yeah. No, she was a COSA. And one of the things that she and I had the discussion about was making that transition or adding those programs in a really intentional way, and making sure that what we had going and the processes were effective before we tried to expand it out, because I've had the same thought that we all have about DLI and expansion. But so I think that was really much appreciated on her part, to hear that. And I think the last thing that I would share would be that I think it was I'm terrible at Norco Corona, or is it Corona Norco? Corona Norco. I'm backwards in my thinking. But they presented a model for counselors in all their schools, which is something that we have discussed here, and how they've integrated the counselors with the teachers and multi-tiered support systems of support, and then tier 1 and tier 2 instructional, all those components, so that they're speaking the same language, and that the teachers are really facilitating the counselors' jobs, and they're working together. Again, something similar to that other notion of not working independent of one another. So those things were really super cool. Fun to hear that people are doing it and doing it effectively, and that it's making a difference for kids. And that's always what we come away with from this conference, are those really great observations, but just trying to share them with you so that it gives us some food for thought for things about where we can go, maybe aspirational. And then the last thing I'll share with you is I'm really tired because I was giving out a lot of sugar today. I wasn't supposed to do that, was I? Okay, sorry about that. No, I spent the whole day literally at Libin Elementary School, and I was there incognito. So I was doing a little bit of reconnaissance as Buddy the Elf. So I went to every classroom on the campus as Buddy the Elf, and I got to tell you, there was a lot of really cool learning going on. So Buddy got to experience STEAM learning, prairie dog towns and prairie dog burrows in the 5th and 6th grade classrooms. I got to experience some 3rd grade STEAM going on with sleds dragging dice across the table to make sure the dice didn't fall out. So there was a lot of coefficient of friction stuff going on there, momentum. So really exciting science stuff for a nerd like me. But I also, the reason I asked the book question is because there were 2 or 3 kids reading Harry Potter or some of those books and expressing interest in those books. So that's why I kind of wanted just to be sure we have that clarification. But yeah, so super great day, super great times at the CSBA. And again, welcome. We had some really, good time to spend together. Ms. Cabral spent an evening with the high school board at dinner, and the one new board member there. So that was really cool. So I appreciate you. I'm glad you're here, Mr. Lara. Congratulations on your reelection. Good to see you. I was giving out candy canes, and thank you for asking. When I went through the 7 levels of the candy cane forest just before I passed this twirly swirly gumdrop sea and then went to the Lincoln Tunnel. I harvested those candy canes for the children. It's true. Dr. McDuffie?
Yes, I think I should go ahead and get started now, right? And what you don't know, President, is that we have pictures. No. No, I do. I should have actually brought them. I don't have any formal comments this evening, but I do want to congratulate both Mr. Board Member Lara and Board Member Cabral for being here. And I look forward to us really getting together and doing some really great things together as a board, as a governance team. I also want to make sure to let the community know, as well as our employees, our teachers, our staff, be safe. Take care of yourself this holiday season. Make sure that you are following safety guidelines. Make sure that you're washing your hands and that you are frequently washing your hands and keeping a distance. We have self-test kits for COVID, and I just want to mention that because it is not gone away. And as a matter of fact, as we go through this period, we have the cold season, we have the flu season coming up, the cold weather. Please be uber, if that's, I can say that, uber sensitive to that yourself, and take care of yourselves. We need you and we need you here healthy. And so I want to just remind the families as well as our staff of being safe and washing your hands. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Also, the CSBA conference was they broke a record of attendance of members there and of school communities. It was a great time to get to know each of you individually as well. And speaking of community schools, that was brought up. We are applying for a grant for community schools, and actually working and partnering close with SMEA in regards to looking at our schools and moving forward with that. So I'm very interested to get more information about Oakland and what they're doing with the community schools and our continued research in bringing that to Santa Maria Bonita. And with that, I'd just like to wish everyone out there a very happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. So take care of yourselves.